All right, next we have Charlie Biedenharn. Charlie was born in 1982 in San Antonio, Texas. He has a BA in English from University of Incarnate Word and an MBA from the University of Texas McCombs School of Business. Before returning to San Antonio, Charlie lived on both coasts of the United States and has several opportunities to travel abroad. In 2011, Biedenharn famously teamed up with pastry chefs Jeremy Mandrell and Ann Ing to form Bakery Lorraine. Their small farmer's market creation quickly grew from a card table to a brick-and-mortar house to a multi-location business across San Antonio. The trio's newest venture, Maybelle's Donuts and Fried Pies, is found inside the bottling department at the Pearl Brewery. Very fun place, and is named after Charlie's late canine friend, Maybelle. When not working, Charlie enjoys spending his time in the outdoors, visiting with his grandmother, playing with his dogs, and collecting tattoos, satisfying San Antonio's sweet tooth. Everybody, Charlie Biedenharn. Charlie, come on up here.
All right. Kind of wish, I'm ashamed to admit that I kind of wish everybody hadn't been so awesome, because the bar is set pretty high. All right, I'll go to it. When first asked to speak at PechaKucha, my immediate reaction was excitement, followed by anxiety, then paralyzing fear, followed by still more anxiety. I was caught in the procrastination, inaction, death spiral. So I did what any normal person would do, and I took to the internet for help. Unfortunately, after searching for phrases such as how to talk about myself or how to seem more interesting to people and other various combinations of similar words, I was still back at square one, feeling unsatisfied with building an entire presentation about myself. So I thought I can talk about the bakery business and what it takes to run a restaurant. But like many of my friends are quick to point out, it's just not interesting. Plus, there is no way I could do as good a job at this as people like Jeremy and Ann or Chad Carey who have presented in the past. So I began to have a minor crisis. Has my life really become this boring? Has my once exciting existence devolved into such a monotonous routine of minutia that I can't think of anything interesting to share about myself? Of course it has. But I can talk about the person that means the most to me, my grandmother. Marjorie Davis was born on June 14th, 1931 in Memphis, Texas. Here's a picture from the early 30s in this Dust Bowl town. When describing this picture to me, she was quick to point out that her rocking chair and all the dolls she had really shows how well off they were in these hard times. Like many other families in the era, my grandmother and her parents hit the road west in search of opportunity. Unlike many strictly agricultural families, her father's job prospects were greater than most as an engineer, and they ended up in Pasadena for several years before eventually heading to the then tiny desert town of Phoenix, Arizona. Here, my grandmother and her family put down roots. She attended high school and later went to college at Arizona State University. Sadly, it was here that my grandmother's father passed away in his prime from lung cancer, having been a heavy smoker, thus leaving my grandmother, her younger sister, and mother with very little, as most of their resources had been exhausted in medical expenses. Fortunately, my grandmother's mother, Billie Ruth Peck, was not one to acquiesce to difficult circumstances or the traditional social norms of the 50s. She went on to become a successful home builder and a short time later was elected to the Arizona House of Representatives, beating an incumbent that swore he would never be defeated by a woman. She went on to serve for 18 years. In 1952, a young man by the name of William Richard Davis, stationed in Phoenix, went on a group blind date that did not go well. He did not get along with his date, but met my grandmother that evening, where they arranged to go out the next night to a party. They went out the next evening, hit it off, and were married 6 months later. On May 25th of 1954, my mother, Debbie Davis, was born. Shortly after, they all moved to San Antonio, where my grandfather would continue to serve in the Air Force and attend law school. This was difficult for my grandmother, as since she left the Texas Panhandle, she had always told her friends that she was from California and had no intention of returning to Texas. See, this is much more interesting than discussing the bakery business. Ironically, when I was talking to my grandmother and mentioned to her that I'd be speaking about her at PechaKucha, she was convinced that no one would find her story interesting and that I'd really have to work some magic to put this thing together. As my grandparents and mother settled into life in the mid-50s in San Antonio, things were not necessarily easy. My grandfather had a difficult time finding work that paid a decent wage after law school, resulting in a near move to Houston for work, but after protestations from my grandmother, they stayed in San Antonio. Over the next 35 years or so, my grandmother lived a great life in San Antonio. The family made a home in a house once owned by my grandfather's best friend, a block from where he grew up. While there were plenty of daily struggles and challenges, some greater than others, this family lived a fairly idyllic life. Sadly, in 2007, tragedy struck as my mother, my grandmother's oldest child, passed away very suddenly. While I'm not sure that either of us have ever been able to truly make sense of this unfortunate event, from this tragedy, the two of us became even closer than we once were, and our bond became even more important in my life. Nowadays, my grandmother, or Daju, as I call her, and I spend a lot of time together. We often sit in the backyard where we commiserate about the sad state of affairs in the world, while she shows off her handiwork, like modifying a zebra figurine that I gave her into a lapel pin that she can wear and turn into an outfit. Or I'll bring the dogs over to visit, where they all compete for space on the couch or on her lap. Over the last few years, we've rescued a handful of dogs, and if they end up over at her house, they truly have it made. They get to garden and cruise the backyard all morning, and then get to snooze all afternoon. These visits are not all play. They can be especially helpful for research and development of new bakery and donut ideas, as I am always certain that I have a taste tester ready. However, I'm not always sure that the feedback is honest, as she is always proud and genuinely excited about everything I'm doing. If only my ideas were really that good. The truth is, the world would be a much better place if everyone had someone like this in their life. A perpetual cheerleader, a motivational speaker, a good listener, an honest and sincere friend, a person who embodies the word altruism, not by grandiose large acts, but just through living life every day. So much so that I felt it necessary to get a portrait of her tattooed on my leg. And she eagerly shows off to her friends, and I've overheard her saying to some of her friends that her grandson has a tattoo of her on his leg, and that she'll bet she is the only grandmother that she knows who can say that. And families come in all kinds and shapes and sizes. And while I know we would both love to have my grandfather, mom, and dad still with us, I'm equally certain that my tiny, immediate family of my grandmother and I is proof that one need only be concerned with the quality of the family, whatever it may look like, and not the quantity of members.
Is she here?
Yeah, she's right here.
Is she here?
Yeah.
Can we say hi? He has a tattoo of you on his thigh? What's that? Oh, man. So your parents aren't here. Your grandma's here.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's how it goes.
That is, yeah.
That's just how it goes.
Yep.
Because, we never know. You never know what life's going to deal you.
Yep.
And there's no promises. And tomorrow is promise to no man, as they say. So here she is. Wow, really touching. Let me ask you this on a lighter note. Do you actually have a sweet tooth yourself? Let me ask you that. What's your favorite pastry? I assume Jeremy and Ann are here.
No, they're actually Jeremy and Ann are actually down in Rockport right now cooking for a lot of the families displaced.
Well, do you have a favorite pastry? It's probably a pretty typical question.
It's a tough question, actually. I think I have the Black Forest cake that was over there on the table tonight was pretty delicious.
Okay, so we're having some Baker Lorraine stuff over here, Black Forest cake.
Yeah, that was really good. But I think my favorite thing to eat is probably just a croissant. I think is the best thing. So, yeah. And
I've heard you guys have as good a croissant as there is to be had. Let me ask you this. There was a recent movie that was talking about, it was called The Founder, and it was talking about Ray Kroc, who is the original franchisee of McDonald's. You're known as the nuts and bolts guy for Baker Lorraine. Sure. I read that you actually at one point had a cot there in the bakery. Is that true? Because you're so passionate about the nuts and bolts
I bought the
process.
Cot, but Jeremy slept on it.
Well, that ruins the premise of my question. But the idea is basically like the McDonald's brothers couldn't let go because they were such micromanagers about the quality of the product, especially in food service. How are you able to grow and yet let go?
Well, we don't. We live really shitty lives, actually.
That's honest.
No, we've upped our counseling sessions to a couple times a week, and we're making some breakthroughs. So,
speaking of honest, I read a profile that you had in San Antonio Magazine about a year ago. Talk about honest.
Yeah.
Uncompromising.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I don't know. I think that I had a kind of a circuitous route that led me to where I am, and I think I wanted to share it with the city that means a lot to me here, in the hopes that maybe it would positively impact somebody, and maybe give somebody some hope for themselves or a loved one. So,
Charlie, I think it meant a lot to be that honest. I think there's a lot of people out there that heard your message, and it meant a lot. Charlie Biedenharn, Baker Lorraine. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.